Hello, I'm Clara, and you won't believe what happened to me. My world shattered when I discovered the truth about my husband's betrayal. Ethan wasn't just cheating. He was planning to leave me for someone else. But it gets worse. The Blackwell family, my in-laws, had been hiding secrets, using me as a pawn in their games. They took everything, my trust, my money, my family. I fought back, but in the end, what's the cost of revenge? Stay tuned, because the truth is about to come out, and it's going to change everything. It was a regular morning in California, one of those mornings where everything felt normal, safe. I brewed my coffee, still groggy from the night before, and as I looked out the kitchen window, the world seemed unchanged. But that was before I opened the email. The message from a friend hit me like a brick to the chest. Ethan, my husband, the man I had built my life with, the father of our children, the person I thought I knew. The email wasn't just a vague accusation, it was proof. A series of pictures, a timeline, and there, in plain text, the most brutal words I'd ever read. Ethan was having an affair with Melissa, and he was planning to divorce me. I felt my legs go weak, and I stumbled backward, dropping my mug. The coffee splashed across the counter, but it was nothing compared to the shock washing over me. The betrayal was so complete, so devastating, that I couldn't find my breath for a few seconds. My chest tightened, and my hands shook. How long had he been lying? How long had he been planning this behind my back? A sudden rush of anger surged within me. I'd been blind, but now I could see it all. The lies, the late nights, the odd behavior, the excuses. The thought that he could do this to me, the mother of his children, was almost too much to bear. I grabbed the edge of the counter, trying to steady myself, but the betrayal kept punching through my chest, harder with each passing second. Ethan had taken everything I believed in and shattered it in an instant. My mind raced. What would I do now? Should I confront him? Should I call him? The urge to react immediately was overpowering, but I knew I couldn't just dive into the unknown. I had to think. The phone rang before I could make sense of anything, and I almost didn't want to pick it up. But I did. It was my old friend Carol. Clara, her voice was low, hesitant. I know this is going to hurt you, but I have more information about Ethan and Melissa. I sat down feeling dizzy as she continued. Apparently, this affair wasn't something that had happened overnight. No, it had been brewing for months, and Melissa was deeply embedded in every part of their lives, more than I had ever known. Carol had seen things, overheard things, and her words confirmed what I feared. Ethan had been planning this for so long. He wasn't just cheating. He had been strategically pulling away, emotionally and physically. He had set his sights on a future without me, without our family. I felt a surge of emotion again. Anger, yes, but also something else. Something sharper, something colder, empowerment. I wasn't going to let this be the end of my story, not this way. I'll make him regret it, I said quietly, my voice filled with a resolve I hadn't felt in months. This wasn't just about getting back at him. This was about taking back control of my life. And I had the proof now. The evidence I needed to fight back. I didn't know yet how I would confront Ethan, but I knew that it would be on my terms. No more playing the role of the helpless wife, no more pretending to be blind to the reality he had crafted. I would expose him for what he was. But first, I needed to think. I needed to prepare. And most importantly, I needed to confront the truth. I stood in front of the mirror, taking a long, hard look at myself. The woman staring back at me was not the same one who had walked into this marriage years ago. No, that woman had been naive, trusting, but not anymore. I was done with that version of me. I would confront him, and when I did, I would be stronger than he ever thought possible. That evening, I prepared for the first of many confrontations. My mind raced as I rehearsed the words I would say, but deep down, I knew nothing would prepare me for the emotional fallout that was coming. I had no idea what I was walking into. Ethan had told me the party was just a casual gathering, a little celebration to mark the end of our marriage. It seemed harmless enough, maybe even cathartic, but as I pulled into the driveway of the Blackwell estate, something in the air felt wrong. The grand house loomed in front of me like a fortress, its towering gates welcoming me into a scene I wasn't prepared for. The door was open, and the laughter inside sounded too loud, too forced. I had expected some awkwardness, perhaps a few uncomfortable silences, but nothing had prepared me for what I was about to witness. Stepping inside, the room fell silent for a moment. Every pair of eyes turned toward me. There were too many people here, family, friends, acquaintances, but they weren't just guests. They were witnesses to my humiliation. A quick glance told me everything. Ethan wasn't just divorcing me. This was their way of making sure I was gone for good. The Blackwell family had orchestrated this event, and it wasn't for my closure. It was to publicly push me out of the family, to ensure I was nothing more than a forgotten chapter. I tried to steady myself, my heart pounding in my chest, but the anger bubbling inside of me was hard to contain. I had been a part of this family for years, and now they were treating me like an outsider. The weight of the situation was heavy, but I couldn't show weakness. Not now, not in front of them. Just as I tried to pull myself together, Melissa appeared, always poised, always in control. The same Melissa who had been sleeping with my husband for months. She walked toward me with that smug, too-perfect smile, and my blood boiled. "Clara," she said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "I hope you're ready to move on. This is what's best for everyone, don't you think?" She glanced around at the guests, who nodded, agreeing with her words, their eyes darting from me to her. My fists clenched at my sides. Every word she spoke felt like a knife in my back. Her presence alone, the way she so casually dismissed everything I had ever been to Ethan, was enough to make my head spin. But I wasn't going to let her have the last word. "Best for everyone?" I repeated, my voice barely above a whisper, but sharp enough to make her stop. "You think this is best for anyone?" I glanced around, meeting the eyes of a few familiar faces, all pretending not to care, pretending this wasn't a cruel spectacle. "I've been a part of this family for years, and you think I'm just supposed to walk away and let you take everything?" The room was silent now, save for the soft clinking of glasses. Melissa's face faltered for a split second, but she quickly regained her composure. "You're pathetic," she sneered. "You've always been weak, Clara. Look at you. Look at how you're trying to cling to something that's already over. It's done. Ethan chose me." Her words were like a slap, but they didn't break me. If anything, they fueled me. The more she tried to diminish me, the stronger I became. I could feel it, the anger swelling inside of me, not just for what she'd done, but for what the Blackwell family had turned into. They were all complicit in this, all of them. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. As humiliating as this was, it was also the turning point. No longer would I allow myself to be a victim in their game. I looked around, taking mental notes of everyone in the room. It wasn't just about Ethan or Melissa anymore. This was about the Blackwell family and the truth they thought they could bury. The lies, the manipulation, the way they thought they could control everything. I was going to expose it all. As the conversation shifted back to casual small talk, I felt the anger simmering inside me, but now it was different. It wasn't just anger. It was power. I had the truth, and I was going to use it. In the corner of the room, I saw Ethan talking to his father, looking as calm and composed as ever. His eyes met mine briefly, and I could see the guilt flicker across his face, but it was fleeting. Just a brief moment of hesitation, quickly hidden behind that cold mask he wore so well. I walked over to the center of the room, ignoring the whispers and the stares. I had waited long enough. "Listen up," I said, my voice carrying over the crowd. "This isn't just about me or Ethan anymore. This is about what you all have done, what you've been hiding, and it ends today." The room fell completely silent. I felt every pair of eyes on me, but this time it didn't scare me. It emboldened me. This was my moment. "I'm not leaving this family without a fight," I continued, "and neither is anyone else. If you think you can just sweep this under the rug, you're mistaken. I will make sure every last one of you pays for this." The words hung in the air like smoke, thick and suffocating. The tension was palpable. Clara had finally spoken up, and nothing would ever be the same again. The courtroom was cold, sterile, and felt like a battleground. As I walked in, the weight of the situation hit me. This was it. The moment I had been preparing for. The moment where I would stand in front of everyone and expose the Blackwell family for what they truly were. The tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. This wasn't just about Ethan or the betrayal anymore. It was about everything they had tried to cover up, and I had the evidence to make them pay. The secrets I'd uncovered about their family's dark dealings were far worse than I had ever imagined. I had spent countless nights organizing the documents, double-checking the files, and rehearsing my strategy. I knew I had to be precise, focused, and calm. The Blackwells had power, money, and influence, but they didn't have the truth, and that was something I could use to my advantage. My lawyer, Linda, had been by my side since the beginning, but today, something felt off. I glanced at her as we took our seats. She was scribbling something on a notepad, but her movements were too fast, too distracted. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The judge entered, and the room fell silent. We were officially starting. As the trial began, my heart raced with a mixture of fear and determination. I had prepared for this moment, but now that it was here, I couldn't help but feel a cold sense of dread. This wasn't just about me. This was about bringing justice to light. The Blackwell family's lawyer, Gregory Blackwell, Ethan's cousin, started speaking. His voice was smooth, calculated. He had a way of turning everything into a game. He painted me as a jilted wife, desperate to cling to a marriage that was already over. Every word he spoke felt like a slap in the face. But then, in the midst of the proceedings, something shocking happened. Linda, the one person I had trusted, turned on me. "Your Honor, I believe we need to reconsider the evidence presented by my client," Linda said, her voice steady, but her eyes avoiding mine. "We need to discuss some discrepancies." Discrepancies? What was she talking about? I felt my blood run cold, my stomach twisted into knots as I realized what was happening. Linda had just betrayed me. She was aligning herself with the Blackwells. The betrayal hit me like a punch to the gut. I had trusted her, confided in her, and now she was working against me. I glanced at the judge, but it felt like everything was closing in on me. I wanted to scream, to demand an explanation, but I knew I had to keep it together. The Blackwell family was trying to undermine me from all sides. They knew I had the truth, and now they were fighting back dirty. I took a deep breath and fought to stay calm. My mind raced. If Linda could betray me, then I had to find another way to win this. I had to take control of the situation. As the Blackwell lawyer continued to speak, I started to gather myself. I knew exactly what I had to do. The anger inside me was rising, but I couldn't let it cloud my judgment. The courtroom was my stage, and the Blackwell family was about to face a reckoning. I stood up, my voice steady despite the fury coursing through me. "Your Honor, if I may," I began, taking a moment to glance around the room. I could see Ethan in the back, his face pale, but his eyes never leaving me. He knew what I was capable of. "I have proof that the Blackwell family is not what it appears to be," I continued, my eyes locked on Gregory Blackwell's smug face. "I have evidence of their corruption, their manipulation, and their deceit. I didn't just come here to fight for my marriage. I came here to fight for the truth." The room grew silent, and I could see a few of the jurors exchange looks. I felt a surge of empowerment. This was my moment. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about justice. I pulled out the documents I had painstakingly gathered over the past weeks. My hands were steady as I laid them out on the table, each page filled with damning evidence. I could see the shock on the faces of the Blackwell family. They hadn't expected me to be this prepared. They hadn't expected me to fight back so fiercely. The judge nodded, and the court clerk began taking notes. The Blackwell lawyer, Gregory, tried to maintain his composure, but his usual confidence was slipping. He knew the tide had turned. He attempted to discredit me, to paint me as a vengeful ex-wife with an axe to grind, but it was clear that the evidence spoke for itself. "You're trying to discredit me, Gregory," I said, my voice cutting through his arguments like a knife. "But you know as well as I do that the truth will always come to light." The room was charged with energy. I could feel the shift in the atmosphere. I wasn't just a woman fighting for her dignity anymore. I was exposing the corruption that had been hidden behind the Blackwell name for far too long. And then, just as I thought I had gained the upper hand, the unthinkable happened. A new revelation came to light, one that threatened to undo everything I had just presented. "Your Honor," said a voice from the back of the courtroom, "we have new evidence, evidence that changes everything." I turned, my heart pounding in my chest. What could possibly be more shocking than everything I had already revealed? The anticipation in the room was palpable. My mind raced, but I couldn't prepare for what was about to come. I sat at the kitchen table, the contract spread out before me like a final ultimatum. The Blackwell family's settlement offer was thick with promises, money, properties, the secure future for my children. But it came at a price. My silence, their continued dominance, the cost of my dignity, my truth. And as I read through the legal jargon, every word seemed to tighten around my chest. My heart hammered in my chest, each beat louder than the last. The decision was heavy, almost suffocating. The safety of an easy escape lay in front of me, the financial security that would allow me to walk away from all of this. My mind screamed at me to take it, to put everything behind me. The tension of the last few months, the betrayal, the pain, it could all disappear with a single signature. But something inside me resisted. How could I look my children in the eyes knowing that I had sold my voice for a price? How could I let the Blackwell family win after everything they had done to me? I glanced over at the clock. It was almost time. I had to make a decision. But my mind kept replaying the same question over and over. Should I fight, or should I take the money and move on? I closed my eyes and let the silence settle around me, trying to block out the noise of the world. The last few months had been an emotional war zone, but this was the final battle. The one where I decided what kind of woman I wanted to be, one who fought, or one who took the easy way out. I thought back to that morning when I first discovered Ethan's betrayal, the way my world had shattered, the anger and the hurt had taken over me. It wasn't just a betrayal of love, it was a betrayal of my trust, of everything I had believed in. I thought about the Blackwell family, their manipulations, the way they had used their money and influence to push me out, to strip me of my dignity. I had stood by them, believing in their facade, and now they wanted to sweep me aside like nothing more than a mistake. But I wasn't a mistake. I wasn't some weak woman who could be bought off. I wasn't going to let them destroy everything I had worked for, everything I had believed in. I stood up, my fingers brushing against the edges of the papers. The money, the offer, it all seemed so tempting. But it wasn't enough. Not anymore. I had to fight. I didn't need their money. I needed my justice. And justice wasn't something you bought. It was something you fought for. With one last glance at the contract, I ripped it in half. The sound of the paper tearing was like the breaking of chains. I was done with being passive. I wasn't going to play by their rules. I was going to fight back. That night, as I lay in bed, I could feel the weight of my decision settle in. There was no going back now. I had chosen the path of conflict, the path that would lead to more battles, more pain, but also, hopefully, to victory. The next morning, the Blackwell family called. I wasn't surprised. They had been expecting me to fold, to take their deal, to give in. But when I declined, when I told them that I wasn't going to back down, they were furious. Their words were sharp, cutting through the air like daggers. They told me I was being foolish. They told me that I was risking everything for nothing. But I wasn't listening anymore. I wasn't afraid of them. I wasn't afraid of losing it all because, in the end, I had nothing left to lose. The confrontation came quickly after that. The Blackwell family stormed into my house, their presence heavy, their power palpable. They tried to intimidate me, tried to convince me that I was making a mistake. "Clara?" Ethan's voice was cold, calculated. "You don't know what you're up against. You'll regret this." I looked him in the eyes, my voice steady. "You think I'm afraid of you?" His eyes flickered for a moment, but the arrogance never left his face. "You should be. This isn't over." "I'm not backing down," I said, the words feeling like a declaration of war. "I will make sure the world knows who you really are." Their smirks faltered, but they didn't back down. They never did. As they left, I knew one thing for sure. The fight was far from over. They had underestimated me, and now I had to show them just how wrong they were. The battle was about to get even uglier. But I was ready. The tension in the air thickened, and I braced myself for what was coming next. The Blackwell family might have been powerful, but I had the truth. And now, nothing was going to stop me from exposing them. The courtroom was a battlefield, and I stood on the edge, ready to unleash the storm. My heart raced as I glanced down at the evidence laid out in front of me, proof of the Blackwell family's fraudulent activities. The Blackwells, with their polished suits and smug smiles, had underestimated me. They thought they could push me aside, break me with their lies. But today, I had something they couldn't ignore. I stood tall, the weight of my decision pressing on me, but the surge of adrenaline was stronger. This was my moment, the moment where everything changed. As I presented the evidence, I felt the courtroom air grow heavier. The gasps and whispers spread like wildfire. This wasn't just about my divorce anymore. This was about exposing the corruption that ran deep in the Blackwell family's veins. The judge's eyes were fixed on the evidence as I spoke, but it was the Blackwells' shocked expressions that told me everything I needed to know. They were losing control, and they knew it. The tension in the room was palpable. Every word I spoke carried the weight of my past. Every betrayal, every tear, every sleepless night. The stakes had never been higher. And then, just as I thought I had them cornered, Ethan did something I wasn't prepared for. He stood up. The room fell into a stunned silence, as if the very air had been sucked out of the space. Ethan, the man who had destroyed my world, the man who had torn apart our family, was standing before me, his face a mask of regret. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice raw, almost pleading. "I've made so many mistakes, Clara. I was wrong. I know I can never fix this, but I am truly sorry. For everything." I froze. I hadn't expected this. Not from him. Not now. The man who had once promised to love me, to protect me, had torn it all apart without a second thought. Now he was offering an apology, as if a few words could undo the damage he had caused. My heart wavered, but my mind was clear. This wasn't about forgiveness. It wasn't about him. His apology meant nothing. It was a last-ditch attempt to salvage something, anything from the wreckage he had created. But no apology could heal the wounds he had inflicted. The betrayal ran too deep. I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the floor, the sound slicing through the tense silence. "No," I said, my voice sharp. "Your apology means nothing to me. You don't get to make this right with a few words." The words were out before I could stop them, but they felt like a weight lifting off my chest. I wasn't going to let him control the narrative anymore. I wasn't going to be his victim, no matter how hard he tried to play the remorseful husband. Ethan's face fell. His eyes darkened, but he didn't argue. There was nothing left to say. I turned back to the judge and continued. The Blackwell family might have thought they could intimidate me, but I wasn't going anywhere. I would fight. I had already made up my mind. The trial raged on, but with every word I spoke, the tables turned. My legal team, empowered by Ethan's unexpected admission of guilt, pushed forward with renewed vigor. The Blackwell defense team tried to discredit me, but nothing they said could change the truth of what had been revealed. "Your Honor," one of the Blackwell attorneys said, trying to regain control. "This is all just a smear campaign, a woman scorned, trying to tear down a family." I didn't let him finish. "It's the truth," I snapped, "and you can't hide from it anymore." The courtroom buzzed with tension as the battle continued, but despite the anger and bitterness swirling in the room, I felt something shift inside me. Power. Control. For the first time in months, I was in the driver's seat. I wasn't the woman who had been broken by betrayal. I was the woman who would expose every last secret of the Blackwell family and make them pay for what they had done. But just as I thought the battle was mine, the Blackwells had one last card to play. A new revelation, something I hadn't anticipated, surfaced. Another twist. Another dark secret. The room went silent again, and my heart skipped a beat. I could feel the eyes of everyone in the room on me, on us. This revelation was more dangerous than anything that had come before. The Blackwell family had more secrets than I had ever imagined, and they were ready to drag me into every last one of them. Clara, the woman they had underestimated, the woman they thought they had beaten, was about to face her greatest challenge yet. The moment I stepped into the room, the air felt thick, heavy with tension, history, and the weight of everything that had led to this confrontation. There he was, George Blackwell, sitting across from me, the patriarch of the family, the man whose influence had been the dark cloud hanging over my life for far too long. This wasn't just another meeting. This was the reckoning. I had the evidence, hidden documents, financial records, messages, all pointing to George's involvement in the Blackwell family's criminal activities. The corruption he had orchestrated ran deep, and today, I was going to make sure the world saw him for what he truly was. The man who had enabled Ethan, who had let his son destroy lives, was going to answer for his actions. My heart pounded as I placed the evidence on the table between us. The silence was deafening. George's eyes flickered down to the documents, and for a moment, I thought I saw a crack in his composure. But then he looked back at me, cold, calculating, and unrepentant. "You think this will change anything?" he asked, his voice low but dripping with disdain. "You think you can bring me down with a stack of papers? You're a fool, Clara." I didn't flinch. The fury building inside me surged to the surface, but I remained calm. "You underestimated me," I said, my voice steady. "This is just the beginning." The Blackwell family had always prided themselves on being untouchable, but today, that illusion was shattered. As I spoke, I revealed the full extent of their crimes, George's illegal deals, the manipulation, the lies. Every word was a dagger, and each one made George squirm in his seat. But he was not about to go down without a fight. "Do you have any idea what you're doing?" George's voice grew louder, his tone darker. "You think you can expose me? You're nothing. Just a woman scorned, trying to take down a family with more power than you'll ever have." His words stung, but they only fueled my resolve. I wasn't afraid of him. I wasn't afraid of anything anymore. "Your family has been living a lie for too long," I shot back, "and it's time the world knew who you really are." The confrontation escalated, my words growing sharper with each passing moment. The more I exposed, the more desperate George became. His composure was slipping, but he refused to back down. Then, in a moment that I would never forget, George stood up, his eyes blazing with rage. The tension in the room snapped like a taut rope. "You're out of your depth, Clara," he snarled. "I'm done playing games." Before I could react, George lunged forward. The shock of it hit me like a freight train, and I stumbled back, barely dodging his furious grasp. My heart raced, and my instincts kicked in. I wasn't going to let him overpower me, not this time. The struggle was chaotic, violent. George's anger clouded his judgment, and for a brief moment, he seemed like a different person, feral, unhinged. But I wasn't the same woman who had stood by in silence for so long. I fought back, using every ounce of strength I had. My hands shook, but my resolve remained firm. In that moment, I realized something crucial. I wasn't fighting just for me. I was fighting for the truth, for the future, for everyone who had been hurt by this corrupt family. And I wasn't going to let George or anyone else stop me. Finally, I broke free, putting distance between us. George was panting, his face red with rage, but I stood tall, unshaken. I had a decision to make. The violence of the moment made everything so much clearer. I could walk away, let this go, and accept the consequences. Or I could press charges, hold George accountable for the years of destruction he had caused, not just to me, but to countless others. As I looked at George, the man who had caused so much pain in my life, I made my choice. "I'm pressing charges," I said, my voice firm, resolute. "This ends now." The moment felt like a weight lifting off my shoulders, but I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. The battle for justice had just taken on a new urgency. George's eyes narrowed, his lips curling into a sneer. "You think this is over? You think you've won?" His voice was dripping with malice. "The Blackwell family doesn't lose." I stood my ground, unyielding. "You've lost more than you realize." As I turned to leave, I knew this fight wasn't over. George wasn't the only one who had power. But with every step, I could feel the strength growing inside me, the power that came from standing up to him. And I was ready for whatever came next. The Blackwell family might have thought they could break me, but they hadn't even begun to see what I was capable of. The moment Ethan approached me again, I knew exactly what was coming. His voice was tentative, softer than I'd ever heard it before, almost pleading. "Clara," he began, "I know I've made mistakes, but please, can we just try to fix this? Can we try again?" The words hung in the air, thick with an intensity I hadn't expected. Every cell in my body screamed at me to walk away, but I stayed rooted to the spot, my eyes locking with his. The man who had betrayed me, who had shredded the very fabric of our family, now stood before me, asking for my forgiveness. And for a moment, I felt a sharp pang of something, maybe pity, maybe rage. It was hard to say. "You can't fix this, Ethan," I said, my voice steady but laced with a finality I hadn't realized was there. "I've given you more chances than I can count. This is it." He took a step closer, his face etched with regret, but my heart had hardened to him. "I was wrong. I know that now, but please." "No," I cut him off, shaking my head. "It's over. There's nothing left to fix. I'm done." The words were heavy, each syllable cutting through the years of false hope I'd clung to. His apology was too little, too late. I realized with a quiet clarity that there was no turning back now. The weight of the past was lifting, but it came with its own sharp pain. The betrayal, the lies, it was all too much to undo. As Ethan stood there, his face crumpled with a mixture of disbelief and regret, I couldn't bring myself to feel sorry for him. The woman who stood before him now was not the one who had once believed in his promises. I was something else entirely, stronger, fiercer, and more determined than I had ever been. This was no longer about love, it was about justice. "I'm sorry, Clara," Ethan whispered, his voice strained. "I really am." "Sorry doesn't cut it," I replied. "You've lost your chance. I'm not looking back." The emotional toll of everything we had been through hit me, but it wasn't just anger that I felt now. There was a strange, painful relief in finally letting go. Letting him go. As I turned to walk away from the man I had once loved, there was no regret, just the knowledge that I was free. But as soon as I thought I could breathe again, the enormity of what had been uncovered about the Blackwell family hit me like a wave. I had thought the worst of it was over. I was wrong. Over the past few days, I had dug deeper into the Blackwell family's affairs, and what I uncovered made my blood run cold. The extent of their manipulation, not just in business but in politics, was far more significant than I could have imagined. The Blackwells were not just corrupt in the way I had thought. They had used their power to influence elections, secure government contracts, and eliminate anyone who posed a threat to their empire. The weight of their secrets was staggering, and as I realized how deeply they had poisoned the world around me, I knew this wasn't just about my divorce anymore. This was a fight for the truth, a fight to expose a family that had been manipulating systems, controlling people, and bending the law for years. This was bigger than me. I felt a surge of righteous anger course through me. This wasn't just about my broken marriage. This was about protecting the future, about fighting for what was right. It was about showing the world that the Blackwells couldn't keep getting away with everything, and I was going to make sure they didn't. I spent the next few days preparing, strategically planning my next move. It was time to expose them all, and I wasn't going to stop until every single one of them was held accountable for what they'd done. But as if the universe had other plans, I received a call that shook me to my core. Melissa, the woman who had been at the center of my broken marriage, she had reached out, seemingly ready to come clean. We met in a quiet cafe. I wasn't sure what to expect, but as soon as she sat down, I saw the vulnerability in her eyes. For the first time, she wasn't the enemy. She was just a woman who had been caught in the web of the Blackwell family's lies. "I didn't want any of this," she confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. "I was manipulated just like you. I'm sorry, Clara. I should have never let it go this far." For a moment, I didn't know how to react. The woman who had destroyed my marriage was now standing before me, showing remorse. But that didn't change the fact that she had been complicit in everything. The anger inside me flared again, but it was quickly replaced by something else. Understanding. She wasn't the true villain here. The Blackwell family was, and she was just another pawn they had used. "You should have walked away, Melissa," I said quietly, my voice thick with emotion. "But I can't change the past. You can, though. It's time to choose sides." She nodded, looking at me with tears in her eyes. "I want to make it right. I will help you. I'll expose them too." It was a complicated moment. Part of me wanted to hate her, wanted to blame her for everything that had happened. But another part of me understood. The Blackwells had twisted everything around them, turning good people into enemies. And perhaps, just maybe, there was still a chance for us both to find justice in the wreckage. As the conversation ended, I knew this was it. The final confrontation with Melissa had come and gone. The fight was no longer just about Ethan or even the Blackwell family. It was about something bigger, and the battle ahead was going to be the hardest yet. But no matter what happened, I wouldn't back down. I couldn't. And then, just as the weight of everything seemed to settle, I received a message from an unknown number. It was a warning, plain and simple. "You're playing a dangerous game, Clara, and you will lose." The Blackwell family was coming for me, but I wasn't afraid. The end game was here, and I was ready to fight until the very end. I entered the cafe with the weight of the world on my shoulders. The past months had been a blur of chaos, anger, and betrayal, but today was different. Today, I was stepping into the final confrontation with Melissa, the woman who had torn apart my life, the one who had been complicit in Ethan's betrayal. It was time to settle things, not just for me, but for my future. I had no more room for excuses or apologies. The tension was thick as I walked toward her. She was already seated, her eyes flicking nervously to me as I approached. Melissa, the woman who had been my friend, who had known all along and chosen to betray me, was now sitting before me, as vulnerable as I had ever seen her. I sat down opposite her, and for a moment, neither of us spoke. The silence between us was heavy, charged with all the things that had gone unsaid for far too long. I could feel my pulse quickening, my hands clenched into fists beneath the table. I wanted to scream, to lash out, but I held it in. I needed to hear her story. She looked at me, tears welling up in her eyes. "Clara, I don't know where to start. I never wanted to hurt you, but I was pushed into this. I didn't have a choice." I took a deep breath, my emotions a swirling storm inside me. "You always had a choice, Melissa. You made the wrong one. You chose to destroy my family. You chose to betray me." "I know," she whispered, her voice breaking. "But you have to understand. I was manipulated. George and Ethan, they used me. I thought I could escape, but I was too deep in. I didn't know how to get out. I was scared, Clara. They would have ruined me. They already ruined me." Her words hit me like a punch. I stared at her, stunned. Everything I thought I knew, everything I'd believed about her, was crumbling before my eyes. Melissa wasn't the heartless, conniving woman I had painted her to be. She was another victim of the Blackwell family's manipulation, just like me. My anger and betrayal warred inside me. How could I ever forgive her for what she had done? How could I forget the years of lies, the hurt she had caused? And yet, I couldn't ignore the flood of empathy that was welling up within me. Melissa wasn't the mastermind behind this. She was just a pawn in their game, a pawn who had made a terrible mistake, but a pawn nonetheless. I closed my eyes for a moment, trying to steady my racing thoughts. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about understanding, about seeing the bigger picture. And perhaps it was time to stop letting the Blackwells define who I was. "Why didn't you tell me, Melissa?" My voice was quiet, the hurt still fresh. "Why did you let me believe you were just like them?" "I didn't know how to tell you. I thought you'd hate me forever. And I didn't want to lose you, Clara. I thought, maybe if I stayed close to you, I could protect you. But I was wrong. I should have told you everything from the beginning." I let out a sharp breath, trying to calm the storm within me. This was not the confrontation I had envisioned. I had prepared myself for anger, for bitterness, but this was different. I wasn't sure what to feel, but one thing was clear. The fight I thought I was waging wasn't just against Ethan, against Melissa, or even the Blackwells. It was about justice. It was about righting the wrongs that had been done to all of us. I looked at her, the decision heavy on my chest. I can't forgive you for what you've done, Melissa, but I don't think you're the enemy here. The Blackwells are. They used us both. She nodded, the weight of her actions and their consequences pressing down on her. I'll do whatever it takes to make it right, Clara. I'm ready to fight them too. I felt a small flicker of something inside me, a glimmer of hope. Maybe this wasn't all lost. Maybe, just maybe, I could turn this tragedy into something more powerful than revenge. I wasn't in this alone anymore. But the Blackwells, they were not going down without a fight. I stood up, my decision made. You've made the right choice, but it's not over. The Blackwell family is still out there, and they're not going to stop. Melissa stood with me, her posture more determined than I had ever seen it. I'm with you, Clara. Let's bring them down. As we walked out of the cafe, the reality of what lay ahead hit me. The battle with Melissa was over, but the war with the Blackwell family was just beginning. And I was ready. This time, I wasn't going to let them win. But just as we reached the door, my phone buzzed. I hesitated before answering. The message was short, but its meaning was clear. You've made a mistake. You won't win. The Blackwell family will destroy you. I took a deep breath. The stakes had never been higher. The final showdown was coming, and I wasn't backing down. The courtroom was silent as the final verdict was read. My heart raced, but the weight of anticipation was nothing compared to the rush I felt when the judge confirmed my victory. Custody of my children was finally granted back to me, and my assets, my freedom, were no longer tied to the Blackwell family. But it wasn't just the material things that mattered. I had done it. I had exposed them. The Blackwell family's darkest secrets were laid bare for the world to see, and there was no turning back now. The emotions surged within me. A quiet triumph settled deep in my chest, but it was tempered by a heavy sadness. I had won, yes, but at what cost? I could feel the weight of my journey, every betrayal, every tear, every sleepless night. The victory felt bitter, a hollow shell of what it should have been. I could hear the murmurs around the room. The Blackwells were in shock. Ethan, standing at the back with his head bowed low, didn't even look at me. The rest of the family stood frozen, unable to process the reality of their downfall. In their eyes, I saw everything they had fought to keep hidden, now in the light for everyone to see. But as the gavel dropped and the legal battle came to an official close, a strange sense of relief washed over me. The Blackwell Empire, the one built on manipulation, lies, and control, was crumbling, and it had all fallen apart because of me. I had done this. I had destroyed their power. The relief, though, was mixed with sorrow. I had avenged myself. I had avenged my children. But what about the pieces of me I had lost along the way? What about the person I used to be before Ethan, before the Blackwells? I wasn't sure if that woman still existed. As I left the courtroom, I felt the weight of my actions follow me out. The Blackwells were finished, but the emotional toll would never be undone. The victory wasn't as sweet as I had imagined it would be. The fight had taken its toll on me, on my soul, on everything I had held dear. As I reflect on everything I've been through, I realize that life doesn't always give us the happy endings we expect, but it does give us the strength to keep moving forward. The journey wasn't just about fighting back against betrayal. It was about finding my voice, reclaiming my power, and deciding what kind of person I want to be despite everything. We all face challenges, some larger than others, but it's how we respond that shapes us. Remember, no matter how deep the betrayal or how strong the forces against you, there is always a choice. A choice to stand tall, to find justice, and most importantly, to heal. My story may be one of pain and struggle, but it's also one of resilience, growth, and hope. Now I want to hear from you. What challenges have you faced that made you stronger? Drop a comment below, and let's start a conversation. If you found this video inspiring, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on future stories that might just give you the strength you need to keep pushing forward. And if you didn't like the video, I'd love to know why. Your feedback matters. Let's connect and grow together. Thank you for watching, and until next time, stay strong.